Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
The first woman Prime Minister of Britain. The first winner of 3 elections in a row for over 150 years. Known for her self-confidence that overawed her enemies. It was these qualities that inaugurated Margaret Thatcher into the history books, but these same characteristics had more intricate implications. Thatcher's leadership during the Cold War era left an indelible legacy not only in modern English history, but also on the eastern side of the Iron Curtain. During World War II, socialism in Britain developed with the intention of distributing proper rewards for those fairly contributing in the war effort. By the early 1940s, the British Labour Party had begun implementing such measures as nationalisation of industry and a minutely worked-out social welfare program. Though these policies did not function as Labour had desired, they were little affected until Margaret Thatcher came to power.
Her whole idea of neoliberalism or liberal economic reform served to really jumpstart an economy that was sluggish, and a lot of the ideas that justified the institutions that existed had started to become discredited by slow growth, inflation, high levels of unemployment, and a lot of union activity that she felt was contributing to poor productivity.
Raised as the daughter of a humble grocer from Grantham, Thatcher's achievements as a woman on the political front surpassed even her own expectations.
I don't think that there will be a woman Prime Minister in my lifetime.
Elected as the Conservative Party minister in 1975, Thatcher was characteristically outspoken and earned the nickname the Iron Lady after a scathing rebuke of communism in her 1976 Britain Awake speech. Though intended as an insult, the moniker became a defining aspect of Thatcher's legacy.
Some socialists seem to believe that people should be numbers in a state computer. But to us, every human being is equally important.
Thatcher's anti-communist ideals fell in line with her policies in Britain. Her primary priorities upon assuming the role of Prime Minister in 1979 were the reinstatement of privatization of state-owned enterprise, deregulation of industry, and curbing the influence of unions. Thatcher's strict budgeting administered a severe shock to the public early on in her premiership, and unemployment and rioting surged against a background of world recession. Though she was urged to chart a less radical course, Thatcher refused to capitulate.
I have only one thing to say. You turn if you want to. The lady's not for turning.
This began the stirrings of the radically polarized emotions in Britain. Despite these initial 11 years of inflation dropped in 1981, and Britain's victory in the Falkland Island War in 1982 not only secured Thatcher's successive re-election, but also brought her iron leadership to international focus.
The spirit of the South Atlantic was the spirit of Britain at her best.
Thatcher had equal conviction during the miners' strike of 1984.
The national interest requires that we see that violence does not pay and is seen not to pay.
The unions protested the closure of over 70 coal pits on grounds that the $3 million subsidies required to keep the mines open were well spent.
The issue before our members is very clear. They either accept the policies of the Coal Board and the government, which will result in the loss of 70,000 jobs, or alternatively they stand on their feet like men, they fight, defend their jobs, defend their pits and defend their dignity.
But after nearly a year, Thatcher's refusal to compromise broke the strike, and union membership in the following years dropped. With the last major union opposition out of the way, Thatcher led Britain to an increasingly privatized economy.
The most enduring thing that is going to come out of this coal strike, a new birth of leadership.
From the beginning of Thatcher's premiership, communism, which surged after World War II, remained firmly entrenched in Europe. The Kremlin's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 and declaration of martial law in Poland in 1980 implied bleak prospects for those living under the shadow of nuclear warfare. In 1977, the Kremlin had chosen to escalate the Cold War by deploying a new generation of medium-range nuclear missiles, the SS-20s, into Soviet satellite states.
She led the fight in Western Europe to install Pershing missiles to counter the Soviet nuclear missiles in the early 80s.
Despite widespread protest across Europe objecting to what thousands perceived as an unnecessary buildup of nuclear forces, the installment of the missiles would ultimately force the Soviets into renewed disarmament negotiations with the US. Eventually, the United States and Soviet Union signed the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty of 1987, which agreed to the elimination of both cruise and SS-20 missiles, ending the last great nuclear conflict of the Cold War. Though strongly anti-communist, Thatcher supported Mikhail Gorbachev, a progressive Soviet politician who would assume leadership of the Communist Party in 1985. Although an arch-conservative, Thatcher did approve of Gorbachev, giving him the support he needed to take leadership in the Kremlin and negotiate with Reagan the disarmament treaty. Later, in 1989, the influential Polish trade union Solidarity, formerly oppressed by martial law in 1981, saw its legalization under Gorbachev. Though she was admittedly apprehensive to aid the union, Thatcher recognized the importance of supporting a major force in the battle against communism, and was the first Western leader to visit Solidarity.
You have the free society and the rule of law. It produces both dignity of the individual and prosperity.
In the year following this meeting, Solidarity's president, Lech Wałęsa, became the first democratic president of Poland.
Without this meeting, there would have been no victory, that's for sure. There would have been delay, greater difficulties, or even our destruction.
They knew that if freedom were allowed to take root in Poland, it would spread across Eastern Europe and perhaps to the Soviet Union itself.
Even after the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, Thatcher's leadership continued to make a deep impression on the economic reformers of many post-communist countries.
Her emphasis on privatization as a way to stimulate the economy and to make enterprises more productive turned out to be important not just for Britain and also for Western Europe and even the United States, and thinking about how to revive those economies, but also a model of reform in the former communist world after the Cold War. So those countries went from 5% private ownership of the economy and 95% state ownership or some form of collective cooperative ownership to probably 80% of those economies being privatized.
Though rapid privatization had its shortcomings, as in Thatcher's England, many Eastern European countries experienced unprecedented success as they adopted more liberal economies. While Thatcher's unceasing self-conviction left many assured that she would cure what she called the British disease, her legacy proved to be a tough pill to swallow. Mass unemployment, rising inequality, and a more fragmented society were an unforeseen result of her leadership that earned her the contempt of many. Thatcher's policies aimed to combat communism, or rather socialist politics in Britain, by busting unions and breaking the post-war social contract. Instead of fostering the village grocer, or for that matter small-town life, her free market policies hastened their decline and domination by supermarkets and other corporations. Thatcher's legacy is mixed. While she undeniably changed Britain, and not always for the better, she did help reduce high inflation, time lost to strikes, and poor manufacturing productivity. Though Thatcher made a point of claiming she owed nothing to the women's liberation movement, she remains a powerful testament to the clear capability of women to effectively wield power. Under the Iron Lady's leadership, Britain was revived from its post-war slump and played an undeniable role in the ideological struggle against Soviet communism, which had lasted nearly 45 years. These actions set the stage for many Eastern European countries to turn to more liberal and prosperous economies in the wake of their formerly communist governments.
I believe you won't keep political freedom unless you also have economic freedom, which means that you must have a large part of free enterprise in your whole economy.
While it is debated as to whether Margaret Thatcher kept her word, promising harmony instead of discord her first time on 10 Downing Street, none can deny the legacy that endures not only in Britain, but also beyond the Iron Curtain.